Hey guys, today I'll show you a supernatural horror mystery TV series named 30 Coins Season 2. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. In the year 33 AD, Judas betrayed Jesus for 30 pieces of silver, believing that the Son of God would perform a miracle and escape captivity. To his shock, Jesus was crucified and suffered on the cross. Overcome with guilt, Judas took his own life. The 30 silver coins he left behind were quickly seized by Jewish onlookers and Roman soldiers. The story unfolds around these 30 coins. Previously on Season 1, Father Vergara was exiled by Rome to the town Pedraza, where he met the righteous mayor Paco and the veterinarian Elena. The three of them struggled to protect the coins against the heretics, who wanted to collect all the coins back to trigger the power for their use. However, the evil Bishop Fabio still managed to collect all 30 coins. In a critical moment, Father Vergara was called by God and embraced Fabio, dying together. The scattered coins were greedily snatched up, with one rolling to the stinky feet of Paco's ex-wife, Merche, who discreetly took one of the coins and chose to join forces with the bishop in charge of assassins and collecting coins, and they left the scene hand in hand. The heretics' wicked ritual came to an end. The scene was littered with the bodies of cultists who had died for the coins, while Paco took the injured Elena and dashed out of the town to save their shitty lives. The scene shifts to the old witch, pushing a cart, taking Vergara's body back home. There, she peeled the skin from her arm and wrote on it that God resurrects in resistance. The witch rolled up the human skin and stuffed it into Vergara's mouth before covering the body with maggots. The next day, Father Vergara resurrected, covered in worms, and found himself in a strange building surrounded by people in black robes. Despite confronting demons, he calmly went downstairs to check out the situation, only to see a river of molten lava flowing from the horizon. It turns out he was brought not to the human world, but the legendary hell. The scene switches to the town a year later. A social media duo arrives hoping to gather some material and boost their viewership. After all, the town of Pedraza had made the news for a black mass, and half the population had been committed to an asylum. The town now seemed deserted, like a ghost town. The pair mustered their courage and entered an abandoned house, only to hear shouting from below. They ran to the window and saw two doctors chasing an old man. However, the cameraman hadn't turned on the camera, missing the entire incident. He and his partner, Haruka, wandered around and found the local church surrounded by a ring of barbed wire with a sign hanging on it, indicating plans to convert the place into a resort. The cameraman launched a drone to see behind the fence, only to discover many doctors in protective gear with detectors, seemingly searching for something. Hearing the drone, one of the doctors knocked it out of the sky. Haruka, afraid of causing trouble, urged the cameraman to leave. Unexpectedly, the out-of-control drone flew straight towards him, cutting him into onion pieces and sending him to fly ghostly drones in hell. On the other side of town, Paco was delivering goods to the fish market. He had made his fortune thanks to his ex-wife, but now, divorced, he had to fend for himself. Paco wasn't discouraged because he could finally have a proper relationship with Elena. Sadly, since the Great Battle, Elena had been in a coma. At that moment, Paco received a call from the detective who hoped he could testify on her behalf. The scene flashes back a few hours to Madrid, where government officials were interrogating the detective. She had been sent to Pedraza town to investigate the truth, but unfortunately, she had fallen victim to the same affliction as the locals, being controlled by a demon. She reported the situation honestly, but the government officials didn't believe her. So the detective wanted Paco to testify, but given that she had wronged many locals, Paco wasn't inclined to help. He had just hung up when he saw a tall, thin figure leaving Elena's ward. Paco tried to follow, but the figure vanished into the corridor without traces of his smell. Meanwhile, the detective received a call from a colleague who advised her to stay out of Pedraza's matters or she'd risk her job. Just as the conversation ended, the colleague received another call reporting the death of the said cameraman. The word Pedraza caught the detective's attention, and she immediately hung up and headed for the town. At the same time, Haruka and the police were heading to the crime scene, only to find that the body had vanished without a trace, along with any blood evidence. After checking nearby surveillance and finding nothing unusual, they assumed it was a prank, took photos for evidence, and left quickly. Undeterred, Haruka decided to stay in the car overnight. To her horror, she found a human head by the window. When she went to look, the old witch who was there took off running fast like a Tesla bike despite being old. Haruka found it strange and followed her, but as she entered an alley, the witch disappeared. Leaning against a wall, Haruka pulled out her phone and accidentally opened a secret door. Inside the courtyard, she saw many eerie dolls hanging, and in the center a coffin filled with maggots. Just as she was wondering what was happening, the old witch attacked her with a scythe. Fortunately, Haruka's quick reflexes saved her from being split in two. Haruka's agility was surprisingly good. She kicked the witch and ran away, hiding in a nearby house. Haruka took out her phone to text for help, but the words disappeared as soon as she typed them. That's when the detective appeared, and the old witch mysteriously vanished with her old body. Haruka wanted to go back and find the secret door, but couldn't locate it anymore. The detective decided to visit the mental hospital first, since most of the town's residents were there recuperating. She wanted to talk to them, but everyone was very secretive about the town's mysterious events of the previous year and wouldn't divulge any useful information. Just then, Haruka noticed symbols on a graffiti board identical to the logo of the company contracted to renovate the church. Right after, some employees brought in an old man, the same one Haruka had seen before. Haruka wanted to follow him, but suddenly the residents went mad, claiming that he was one of their own, leaving the detective utterly confused. On the other side, a retired police officer, Laguna, from Pedraza town, had moved to another Spanish village. He spied on his wife from the shadows and then steeled his heart to leave her. Mysteriously, Laguna pulled out a piece of paper with nonsensical phrases scrawled on it. Nonsensical talk of Trump, Barbra, and dark holes. He darted to a newsstand, picked out a few books related to the words on the note, and drove to the outskirts. There, he encountered the young beggar from Pedraza. Despite his unassuming appearance, this beggar was a chosen one, privy to divine prophecies. He warned Laguna not to seek out his wife or he would be captured. They were, after all, Pedraza townsfolk. Only by hiding in this electrical tower could he evade their surveillance. Flipping through the books Laguna bought, the beggar spoke in riddles, but Laguna couldn't comprehend a single thing. However, the beggar did mention a giant stone that could open a portal, seemingly validating that he wasn't lying. At that moment, in an auction in New York, a mysterious stone from Peru appeared, and Barbra, who was mentioned on the note, also attended the auction with his bald head and was determined to win the bald stone. Suddenly, a gentleman, who was actually the shape-shifting archdemon, escalated the bidding war from 20,000 to a staggering 20 million. Barbra, with deep pockets, secured the giant stone, while the archdemon had already vanished. The beggar was tormented by nightmares that evening, and Laguna quickly approached to document his sleep talk. It was revealed that Elena's soul might be trapped in hell, explaining her comatose state. Meanwhile, back in the hospital, Elena suddenly sat up, her heartbeat soaring. Paco rushed to call the doctor. By the time they returned, she had reverted to a vegetative state, but her consciousness was indeed trapped in hell, surrounded by trembling humans and demons that occasionally came to kill. In a critical moment, Father Vergara arrived, knocked out a few demons, and urged Elena to protect something. Frustrated with the cryptic messages, she wondered why he couldn't just say what needed protecting. What had Father Vergara experienced in hell to speak in such riddles? Flashback to a year ago. After regaining consciousness, he realized he was trapped in hell, surrounded by bizarre creatures and cosplay. He entered a room at the end and saw a tentacled monster. It's the archdemon from the previous season. It turns out, the old witch, under the archdemon's command, had sent Father Vergara to hell to let him know that someone in the living world would create big chaos and doom the world. It's Barbra, the gentleman auctioning the magic stone. This time, in fact, the archdemon wanted Father Vergara's help to take Barbra down. On the other side, in Nice, France, the long-absent Merche surfaced to flex her sexy figure. She awoke in an ultra-luxurious estate with the bishop attending to her with eager smiles, asking if she liked the house and suggesting he could gift her another if she didn't. This man, generous with houses and cars, was actually after the silver coin in Merche's possession. He can't just forcefully take it from Merche because the coin had chosen Merche itself, and unless she willingly gave it up, it couldn't be taken from her. One day, the bishop decided to make a bold move by presenting Merche with a muscular model, telling her she could do anything she wanted with him. However, Merche quickly threw the model's muscles out, clearly unaffected by these schemes. After all, wealth and power pale in comparison to the power of the silver coin. After much thought, the bishop helped Merche adopt a child, knowing she suffered from infertility. Merche was delighted with the child and even instructed him to take the silver coin from the drawer himself. But in a twist, Merche controlled the coin to sever his fingers. Turning to Laguna, he continued to watch his wife from the shadows and noticed the detective and Haruka in conversation. Curious, he hid behind their car to confront them about their intentions. However, the three discovered they shared the same objective: to unravel the truth behind the town's tragedy. Laguna decided to lead them to the beggar, but they found the electrical tower empty. At that moment, Haruka pointed to the sky, showing them the beggar was sitting atop the towering structure. He didn't trust the detective and wouldn't come down until she left. Haruka examined the relationship chart on the wall, noting connections between 20th century physicists and pigs, as well as quantum computers and silver coins and extraterrestrial scholars. But the meaning behind the beggar's actions remained unclear. Laguna only knew that after Fabio's death, Barbra had taken over his place. Upon hearing the name of this wealthy individual, Haruka mentioned that Barbra had established the Brotherhood of Humanity. Moreover, she noticed the mark of a construction company contracted to build churches. The detective sought assistance from a colleague and obtained information about the company, revealing it established an organization called Snook, involved not only in arms manufacturing, but also a leader in nanotechnology. Opening the files, the detective discovered that the head of Snook was the director of the psychiatric hospital. Snook had created the hospital to study the residents' brains, converting parts of their memories into video, and using these videos to locate the silver coins. Meanwhile, the archdemon negotiated with Barbra, claiming that he knew what he wanted to do with the magic stone. His boss didn't want that to happen. If Barbra gave up, he would help him conquer the world. On the other side, Paco went to visit Elena as usual and gave her a massage as instructed by the nurse. However, halfway through, he felt a burlap sack tied around her stomach, which shockingly contained a dead fetus. Paco couldn't help but think of the tall, thin man he had first seen in the ward and felt that the hospital was no longer safe. He decided to take Elena and leave, but just as they were about to escape, they were caught at the hospital entrance. Paco was locked in Ward 6, and then the tall, thin man appeared, wearing a priest's black robe adorned with the symbol of a red snake entwined around a cross. He told Paco that someone would come to talk to him soon, and this person was the archdemon himself. He reminded Paco that madness alone wouldn't save Elena. He needed to use his wits. Paco didn't understand why the archdemon had appeared and was worried about Elena, so he broke free from his restraints, changed into a nurse's uniform, and went to look for her. Finding the room empty, he finally found her in the gynecology ward and was shocked to learn that she was pregnant. The doctor, seeing Paco, was furious, accusing him of being a pervert for not sparing even a vegetative patient. Paco was wronged, as he had never touched Elena. He knocked out the doctor and nurse and dragged Elena into the morgue, disguising her as a corpse. To his horror, the funeral home staff came to collect her body that day, and he watched in confusion as she was taken away. Paco was worried that Elena would be cremated as a corpse. In a panic, he quickly stole a delivery bike and chased after the hearse. He intercepted the vehicle, opened the coffin lid, and called out to Elena, occasionally kissing her, terrifying the transport workers. Meanwhile, the soul of Elena was desperately fleeing in hell. Suddenly, the archdemon rushed forward, grabbed her sexy body, and tore her without hormone mercy. But instead of the agonizing pain she imagined, she miraculously woke up in the real world. It was finally time to reveal what Father Vergara had tasked Elena to protect. It turns out, a year earlier after the archdemon took her to hell, he also brought the soul of Fabio. He told them that Barbra had taken the Book of Miracles, the black leather book which blinds anyone who looks at it. This book contains a summoning spell that can call forth a being superior to all others. The very thing Father Vergara wanted Elena to protect was the Book of Miracles. In a modest apartment on the street, Paco settled in with Elena. She was heavily pregnant and in a foul mood, having awoken from a year-long coma to find herself inexplicably expecting, with no clue as to the identity of the child's father. Anyone would be livid in her shoes. Paco had a hunch that this had something to do with the tall, thin priest, but he didn't care how the child had come to be. He even suggested they could become a family of 3, but Elena was in no mood to listen. Little did she know she had been chosen to save all living beings. The beggar had glimpsed her future, foretelling that once the great stone opened the gates of heaven, the world would face its end, and only she could save it. But the current Elena had no desire to save anyone, only to rid herself of the unborn child as soon as possible. Her belly had grown huge in just 2 months. Paco, fearing regular hospitals, had to spend a great deal of money to find a back-alley doctor. Upon examination, the doctor was baffled by the size of her belly at just 2 months and refused to help. But as Elena neared labor, she had no choice but to proceed. When she reached in to check the baby's position, she could feel neither hands nor head, causing both Paco and the doctor great alarm. Eventually, the doctor managed to deliver the baby, only to shockingly find a large flesh ball. In the next instant, the flesh ball sprouted spider legs, and dragging its umbilical cord, it scurried around the room, playing hide and seek, and eventually dying after a few spasms under a cabinet. Meanwhile, in Rome, the Pope was in a meeting with the cardinals. A significant disturbance had arisen in Pedraza town, and it was imperative to identify the traitor within the Holy See. The bishop became visibly uneasy upon hearing this, aware that the Pope's staff held divine power, and it was nearly impossible to evade judgment. In the midst of the chaos, someone used silver coins to create a distraction, and the bishop seized the opportunity to flee. He later arranged to meet Merche in London, where he and his accomplices gathered. He wanted Merche to travel to Mexico and retrieve 2 silver coins from a cardinal's possession. Merche was reluctant to follow his orders, but with the bishop's cohort in possession of 3 other coins, she was no match for them. Moreover, they had control over her foster son, leaving her with no choice but to make her way to Mexico. After a long journey, Merche finally arrived and approached the cardinal under the pretense of visiting the church. She quickly discovered his brutal and tyrannical nature, almost like he ruled over his own kingdom. Merche, hiding her disgust, entertained the man, but his unabashed bragging and the uncovered human remains on the table infuriated her. Unfazed, the man flaunted the 2 silver coins on the table as if to say she was no match for him. He expressed interest in buying Merche's silver coin and took her to the adjacent room to show off his wealth, with piles of banknotes scattered on the floor like trash. The man boasted that he had too much money to bother collecting it all. Merche, tired of his bluster, revealed that she had lied about having only 1 silver coin. She had borrowed 3. She outsmarted the man, took the silver coins, and planned to leave Mexico. However, she encountered death on the way, and the power of the silver coins in her hand was lost. In a critical moment, Barbra appeared and rescued her, taking her to Paris. But Merche, a firm believer that there's no such thing as a free lunch, immediately showed the power of her 6 silver coins. Barbra, however, had more than 10 silver coins now. He told Merche not to worry and informed her that her son's problem had been resolved. He had come to propose a partnership. After some hesitation, Merche agreed to join Barbra, but first she had to settle a score. After that, Merche went back and killed the bishop who had manipulated her for a long time. The scene switches back to Elena. She was delirious with pain during childbirth, unaware she had given birth to a baby monster. Upon awakening, she was desperate to see her baby. Paco could only tell her that the baby had died a violent death, but Elena wouldn't believe his smelly bullshit. Paco had no choice but to take her to see the delivery doctor, who was in a meeting with her colleagues discussing the spider creature from the day before. The doctor indicated the baby was frozen in the fridge. Elena opened it to a frightful sight, exclaiming, "What on earth that is?" The old doctor placed the dead spider on the table and cut through its outer membrane with a scalpel. As they clumsily researched it, the creature suddenly came back to life. The giant spider lunged at Elena like a face-hugger. Paco rushed to help, throwing the creature to the ground and stomping on it, revealing a key inside the spider's abdomen. That night, Elena had a nightmare of Father Vergara stuffing spiders into her mouth, almost scaring her soul out of her body. Meanwhile, Paco found information about the key online. It was linked to a translation organization in Toledo known for translating similar seals and even banned church books. They approached the Translation Academy, with Vergara overseeing everything from hell, puzzled why the Book of Miracles was in Barbra's possession and why the archdemon would have Elena seek it. Father Vergara controlled a vagrant to warn Elena that the monster was the work of the archdemon and to throw away the key and leave. However, Fabio interrupted Father Vergara's spell, and Elena did not heed the advice. She and Paco waited until nightfall and climbed into the Translation Academy with the help of a ladder. Oddly, there were no security measures in such a large place, filled with translations and tracks that seemed to be used for moving books. There were many keyholes in the bookshelves, but none worked. They followed the tracks and found a hidden door, which they opened with the key, revealing a long staircase leading to a room with a chest inside. Using the key, they retrieved the Book of Miracles from the chest. Vergara had warned against opening it carelessly, so they didn't. Suddenly, they heard noises outside. Paco quickly pulled Elena to escape, but a large killing machine appeared, chasing them along the tracks. Just when it seemed Elena would be sliced in half, Paco jumped on the machine and sabotaged its gears. However, another machine soon appeared, and they barely escaped the compound, only to be surrounded by people outside. Paco ran with the book, and the crowd chased after him. They took refuge in a boutique, but the store owner also seemed crazed to snatch the book. Paco and Elena managed to shake off the store owner and ran out. They ran to the tracks and saw a vagrant lying on them, refusing to move. Trying to warn him, they were shocked when he snatched the book and ran. He didn't get far before being hit by a speeding train. Elena managed to retrieve the book. On the other side, Laguna and the detective were gearing up to investigate the director of the psychiatric hospital. But gaining entry was not going to be straightforward. Laguna decided to feign insanity, an easier task given he was a resident of Pedraza town, which didn't raise any suspicion among the staff. At the same time, Haruka had earned the trust of the beggar and confided in him about her partner's murder. The noble-hearted beggar promised to help her find the truth behind the cameraman's death. Together they returned to the town, where the beggar led Haruka through a secret passage into a sealed church. He revealed that people were searching for silver coins lost at the site under the pretense of renovation. Haruka immediately began recording with her phone, only to capture images of corpses and the sinister witch that were invisible to the naked eye. Urging the beggar to flee with her, they were shocked to find that the pictures and videos on the phone vanished midway through their escape. Inside the psychiatric hospital, the director finally pieced together a clue from the residents. A man in a hat had snatched up a silver coin and disappeared. The staff quickly dispatched people to search the area. Meanwhile, both the detective and Haruka's parties rushed to the scene following the commotion. The director discovered a coin-operated toy in a narrow alley and took it, intuitively feeling it was a lead. Upon opening the coin box, he indeed found a silver coin inside. Laguna, observing from outside the window, witnessed everything. The next day, the coin was delivered to Barbra, who opened his briefcase to reveal a trove of silver coins, and a satisfied grin spread across his face. Barbra, carrying 30 silver coins, traveled to Peru. After disembarking from the helicopter, he arrived at a strange circle with his entourage. Clearing the sand off the ground, he uncovered stone buried underneath and shared a victorious smile with his followers, sensing triumph just ahead. Meanwhile, Elena and Paco, with the magic book in tow, broke through an encirclement. She remembered Father Vergara's advice to seek a priest named Lombardi, but Paco distrusted Father Vergara's word. As they argued, a car crashed into them head-on. In the chaos of the accident, a mysterious stranger attempted to steal the book, but Elena and Paco fought back fiercely, kicking, punching, and even biting to eject the assailant from the car. Clutching the book, they fled. The people around, as if possessed, swarmed them. They loudly warned the onlookers to stay back and then slipped into a tour bus behind them. The pair planned to steal a car once the bus stopped to make their way to the airport. Back to the psychiatric hospital, Laguna approached a mathematical genius among the patients, seeking assistance in deducing the electronic lock's password. The genius provided more than 800 potential combinations. Trying each one individually would drive a sane person mad. Laguna hid in the shadows, spying on staff members as they entered the password. Due to the dim lighting, he only managed to see that it began with the number 4. On a hunch, he tried passwords starting with 4, and to his surprise, it worked. He gained access to the office area, where the hospital director was busy in the innermost room. The content on the display screens was too complex, and the drawers contained inexplicable brochures. Not understanding their purpose, he took photos with his phone and left unnoticed. Laguna sent the title from the brochure to the detective, but before he could elaborate, he was whisked away by the hospital orderlies, who mentioned someone wanted to speak with him. The detective looked at the words he sent in confusion, wondering what High Clair meant. Just then, Haruka called, saying the young beggar sensed danger for Elena and Paco, but couldn't pinpoint their location. Unfortunately, the detective couldn't reach them either. She asked Haruka to look up High Clair, who soon found information online. It turns out the High Clair Forum was a think tank for millionaires who publicly discussed future climate issues on Earth, but secretly researched dark powers. It was now managed by Barbra's sect, a group that spent most of their time on yachts, seldom coming ashore and deliberately avoiding territorial waters. The beggar interjected, claiming to have found a way to protect Elena. They needed a mysterious symbol for protection. The detective tried to contact Paco and, surprisingly, got through, but the connection quickly dropped. Suddenly, the tourists on the bus erupted into chaos, snatching the book and throwing it to the ground. A passerby grabbed the book and ran off. These people were all under Barbra's dark magic control. The book was passed from hand to hand like a relay baton. Elena and Paco chased after it as they got off the bus. The detective's phone signal was restored, and she informed Paco that they needed to find a mysterious symbol to avoid Barbra's interference. Their conversation was interrupted by the flight crew as the plane was about to depart. At that moment, Haruka sent the detective a location, which she quickly forwarded to Paco before dutifully switching her phone to airplane mode. Meanwhile, Elena and Paco caught up with the passerby and subdued the large man with a few punches and kicks. Elena continued to flee with the book in hand. Laguna was led to the visitation room where his wife had come to see him. However, with cameras nearby, he couldn't risk breaking his cover as he was still feigning insanity. Laguna kept glancing at the surveillance cameras while the director watched from outside the screen. After the visit, Laguna was frustrated. His wife was so close, yet he couldn't speak to her. As the patients around him made insensitive remarks, he lost his patience and lunged at the talkative patient. The orderlies rushed to intervene, but it took 2 men to restrain Laguna, who was then sedated with a tranquilizer. That evening, as the effects of the sedative wore off, Laguna used the wheelchair to avoid attention. He opened a window, stepped on the electrical wires, and climbed to the office area window. There, he saw staff members torturing patients in what appeared to be human experiments. Turning to Elena, she and Paco arrive at the place provided by the detective, only to discover that the location is the Temple of Debod. The mysterious symbol mentioned by the beggar boy is hidden here. Just as they are about to enter the site, they are obstructed by a man walking a dog. Predictably, this person is also under Barbra's control. The dog in his hands is restless and barking incessantly. Without hesitation, Elena climbs over the railing into the site, and Paco attempts to follow, but is bitten by the ferocious dog. He manages to shake off its dog shit and climbs over the railing. Together, they successfully locate the star-shaped symbol on the wall, but the entrance is blocked by the gatekeeper and the vicious dog. They have no way to leave. At this moment, Haruka steps in. She starts a live broadcast to share the truths she's recently uncovered and reveals the purpose of the star-shaped symbol. She calls on everyone to come to the rescue of Elena. Late at night, a large group of people wearing sunglasses crowd the entrance to the site, blocking it completely. They face the menacing dog, open their jackets, and reveal the star-shaped symbols on their t-shirts, successfully driving back Barbra's puppet. Everyone escorts Elena and Paco out safely. The pair immediately head to Rome. However, before they can find Father Lombardi, he is knocked unconscious and replaced by one of Barbra's puppets. Elena and Paco don't realize the switch at first. Barbra, controlling the fake priest, tries to deceive Elena into handing over the magic book. The observant Paco senses that something is wrong and does not immediately hand over the book, but instead asks the priest to show him around. Barbra, having other urgent matters to attend to, hands the puppet over to his minion to handle the situation for a while. But the minion is not very skilled and quickly blows his cover. At this point, he drops the act. The minion tries to use the puppet to kill Elena, but mishandles the force and breaks the puppet's arm. Taking advantage of the situation, Elena and Paco throw him down the stairs. The fake priest shatters into pieces, revealing his true puppet form. Meanwhile, the detective heads to Portsmouth and successfully infiltrates a party thrown by the wealthy elite. She dons a coat with an organizational scarf and boldly enters the hall. Barbra soon appears as the keynote speaker alongside Merche, and the wealthy guests stand and applaud in welcome. Merche immediately recognizes the detective. Barbra is promoting his reboot the world doctrine, likening the world to a stuck mobile phone. He suggests that the best way to get everything back to normal is to restart it from scratch. The very few who will be preserved in this new world are the affluent and powerful people present. The reboot is scheduled for March 20th, when Saturn and Jupiter align. Barbra says they can now choose to be among the chosen, or to sit and wait for the end. The choice is in their hands. Merche is completely distracted by the detective, who senses her gaze and hastily exits the hall. The detective escapes through a window, grabbing a blue gift bag, and then catches up with the leader of the elite. Pretending to be an enthusiastic fan, she strikes up a conversation, accidentally knocks over the leader's gift bag, and swaps the 2 bags. However, Merche quickly calls the police, and the detective is caught but does not sit idly by. She escapes from the police car when the officers are not looking, holding tightly to the laptop inside the swiped gift bag. Back in Rome, Elena and Paco escape from the church and enter a random coffee shop on the street. By chance, they encounter the lucid Father Lombardi. The 3 return to the church with the magic book, and Father Lombardi unlocks the chain around the book. He turns away as no one can look directly at the book's content. He uses a mirror to read the reverse text. Father Lombardi explains that the content is cryptic and that to this day no one has deciphered the last page. He believes that even Barbra cannot do it. The spell on the last page is rumored to have the power to summon God and could lead to the end of everything, resetting the world to zero. Paco asks the priest if there is really no way to decipher it. The priest mentions a Danish mathematician who understands the Enochian dialect in the book, but he has been missing for years. Even with this mathematician's help, they would need to gather 30 silver coins first. Unbeknownst to the three, Barbra has already collected the 30 silver coins. The priest stated that although the book contains a reset spell, it also harbors a method to prevent it from happening. Lombardi intends to travel to the site of the ceremony in Peru. Meanwhile, in Hell, the archdemon believes that Father Vergara is no longer of any use and plans to cast him into the infernal flames. Just as Vergara approaches the flames, Lombardi is mysteriously split in two and sent to heaven. Now that the priest who could replace Father Vergara is dead, the archdemon, in order to continue opposing Barbra, can only spare Vergara's life. Moreover, he must send him back to the living world to aid Elena. Upon receiving the archdemon's orders, the old witch decapitates a ram, drains its blood, and then pours it into a coffin full of maggots. She digs through the sand, pulling out the resurrected Vergara from hell back to the living world. Unexpectedly, Fabio also appears. The archdemon orders Fabio to keep watch over Father Vergara on the mission. Since both of their physical bodies are severely decomposed, they head to a nearby funeral home for repairs. They plan to make themselves look passably human before seeking out Elena and Paco. Elsewhere, the detective takes her computer to find Haruka. The computer belongs to a professor from Cambridge University who has worked in Europe's cutting-edge physics projects for over 30 years. Hence, cracking the startup password is necessary to access the computer's content. At the same time, in a Spanish psychiatric hospital, a patient rebellion breaks out. Laguna leads the villagers in knocking out the orderlies and then injecting them with tranquilizers. The crowd attempts to escape through the staff exit, but the orderly's access card fails. In this critical moment, Laguna calls over the girl with the braids, who has acquired the ability to move objects from a distance through human experimentation. He asks her to focus and release the springs inside the lock. The method works, and the braided girl blows the door open. The people rush towards the exit, and any orderlies who try to stop them are taken down by the villagers. The beggar boy and others receive the news and come to assist. Everyone successfully escapes the psychiatric hospital. On the way, the detective receives a call from Paco, who incoherently explains Lombardi's death and their inability to decipher the magic book. Upon hearing this, the beggar takes over the phone, warning Paco to beware of people wearing blue clothes. As soon as the voice fades, the hotel doorbell rings. Paco and Elena go to answer it, and outside stands a woman dressed in blue, claiming there is some evacuation drill. They lie, saying they will come down soon, then sneak away with the book. An accident quickly follows. As they pass by the swimming pool at the exit, Merche, who is miles away in a bathtub performing a ritual, uses the water as a medium to suddenly drag Elena into the swimming pool. Seeing this, Paco immediately jumps in to help. Elena manages to escape the pool, but Merche takes Paco back to the yacht's bathtub. Barbra is furious when he finds out, accusing her of using the silver coin without permission, and instead of taking the book back, she continues to entangle with her ex-husband. Merche explains that Elena won't abandon Paco, and they can wait for her to come to them of her own accord. Paco, held captive by his ex-wife Merche on a yacht, experienced several nightmares in succession. At first, he dreamed of returning to Pedraza town, and then he dreamed of Barbra poisoning him. Waking from the nightmares in a panic, Paco saw Merche looking at him with infatuated eyes. However, he was not swayed by her sweet nothings. He knew that Merche only wanted to prevent someone else from her man. Her true love was always herself. Meanwhile, Barbra's men were digging underground in Peru, preparing for the final ceremony. Unfortunately, a carriage driver crashing into a pit was immediately shot dead by the workers. On the other side, Laguna, leading the recently rescued residents, pressed on along the main road. He was eager to return home to see his wife and explain that he hadn't gone mad. However, the detective and Haruka didn't want Laguna to go home, as they feared the police and the Ministry of the Interior would capture him. With a major crisis looming, those who knew the truth, like themselves, should attempt to stop Barbra from destroying the world. The beggar boy, with his psychic abilities, sensed an imminent crisis. Haruka asked the beggar if there was a way to stop it. The boy said that Barbra's ritual had two nucleus, and he could see the location of the second nucleus, a church covered in cables. Destroying it would thwart Barbra's evil plan. During their travels, a math genius from the mental hospital successfully cracked the professor's computer password. Through the flight records on the computer, they confirmed that the second nucleus was in Barcelona. Elsewhere, Father Vergara finally returned from hell, and Fabio, now in disguise, boarded a plane. Their bodies, already decomposed, quickly spread a foul stench throughout the enclosed cabin, drawing complaints from fellow passengers. Vergara had to retreat to the lavatory for an emergency fix. He wrapped his rotting wounds with cling film and sprayed on perfume to mask the smell. After a difficult journey, he finally arrived in Italy. Vergara immediately contacted Elena, who was startled by the call from the dead. But sure enough, it was Father Vergara's voice on the line. They agreed to meet at the airport information desk in 5 minutes. After hanging up, Father Vergara exchanged a glance with Fabio, and the two acted against the airport security inspecting them. They quickly took out the guards, causing mayhem in the airport. Father Vergara was already a formidable fighter, and now, with nothing to lose in death, he was utterly unrestrained. When Elena saw the revived Father Vergara again, she was overwhelmed with emotion. But Fabio interrupted their conversation, reminding them that Barbra's men had arrived at the airport. Father Vergara handed the magic book to Fabio, and then instructed Elena to go to the back door and call a cab in 5 minutes. Fabio, with the book in hand, entered the bathroom because no one could look directly at its contents. So, he resorted to using the mirror to flip through it. He quickly found Chapter 5, The Gaze of God, which is the very thing Barbra sought to unlock. Just then, a bald passerby exited a toilet stall to flex his bald head, and Fabio smashed his bald head into the glass and threatened him to turn the pages of the book. The bald man, not understanding what was happening, complied out of fear. As he turned the pages further, his eyes suffered unbearable pain. Fabio rapidly scanned the contents of the magic book and noted down a sequence of numbers. The bald man could no longer bear the pain and spontaneously combusted on the spot. Father Vergara, thanks to his undying body, easily took care of the henchmen sent by Barbra. Elena quickly made her way to the underground parking garage. She commandeered a car from a passerby and drove it to the back door to pick up Father Vergara and Fabio. Fabio quickly recorded a sequence of numbers on his phone, fearing he might forget them shortly. He informed Father Vergara that according to the book, in order to stop Barbra, they needed to use the Pope's blood of the eye. It seemed the trio had to make a trip to the Vatican. Soon enough, they arrived at their destination swiftly. Father Vergara met with the local bishop, who took him to see the Pope. The Pope, a cautious man who valued his life, had constructed a fortress to protect against curses. When Father Vergara arrived, the Pope was reading the newspaper in bed. Without beating around the bush, he requested the use of the blood of the eye. The blood of the eye was said to be the very blood of God, from the wound inflicted by Longinus's spear on Christ. However, the Pope was not willing to lend it out lightly. He was surrounded by believers with covetous eyes, and without the protection of the blood of the eye, he feared he wouldn't live long. Seeing the Pope's reluctance, Fabio took matters into his own hands and choked the Pope from afar. He had long despised this man of corpulence and greed. He believed that the corruption within the church was all due to the Pope's incompetence. Father Vergara, seeing this, threatened Fabio with the blood of the eye, saying he would smash it if he didn't release the Pope. Fabio had no choice but to comply. The two men, along with Elena, took the blood of the eye and set off for Peru. The trio, along with the High Clair organization, landed one after the other. Fabio used a spell to unlock a vehicle and stealthily followed the organization's car. He took advantage of a rest stop to knock out several members, swap clothes, and blend into their convoy as if nothing had happened. Meanwhile, Laguna and others reached Barcelona. However, with 15 denominations and over 500 churches, where could they find the second nucleus? Just then, the detective received a call from her boss. She brushed him off with a few words, unaware that her boss had traced her location through the call. As she was on the phone, the beggar suddenly climbed up a tall building. He looked around and successfully located the church with cables. Everyone followed the direction the beggar was pointing to, and indeed saw a building with a glowing tower top. Haruka checked Google Maps and discovered that it wasn't a church, but a supercomputing center. They disguised themselves as reporters and blended into a tour group, managing to enter the building. The detective saw a man with flowing long hair, recognized him from a conference held by Barbra, and surmised that something fishy was going on. They discreetly followed the suspicious long-haired man, who took an elevator to the back door and entered another building guarded by 2 security officers. It was clear they couldn't force their way through this entrance. Laguna went around to the side of the building, opened a manhole cover, and the group planned to enter the building through the sewer. Unfortunately, they were stopped by a huge exhaust fan. Forcing the machine to stop might trigger an alarm, but thankfully, with the help of the braided girl, they could slow down the fan blades with her mind. They took the opportunity to crawl through, but when it was Laguna's turn, the braided girl, exhausted due to her heavy braids, suddenly fainted. As a result, Laguna was sliced open by the fan blades. The rest of the group had no time to grieve because the mathematician was using a quantum computer to decrypt the last page of the magic book. Just as they reached the critical stage of decryption, the detective's superior, following her location, arrived with an armed force, stormed in and began a shooting spree, killing on sight. On the other side, in Peru, Father Vergara and his companions blended into the organization's convoy and arrived at Barbra's base. Fabio used some tricks to get himself and Elena onto a transport vehicle, while Father Vergara acted separately. He attempted to steal a motorcycle parked on the roadside, but the owner, a surprisingly strong woman, rushed over and started pummeling him. Father Vergara didn't hold back either, snatching the motorcycle keys from her. When the owner's accomplices saw this, they immediately opened fire. But since Father Vergara's body was already dead, gunfire didn't faze him. He took the keys and headed to the ritual site. The ground was crisscrossed with long lines that looked like a giant circuit, and Father Vergara's task was to use the blood of the eye to interrupt the current flowing through it. Meanwhile, Fabio and Elena entered the camp, where the staff had them don protective gear. Confused, they just followed along without understanding the purpose. Everyone around them wore red wristbands. Fabio noticed this and secured one for himself. It seemed that those wearing red wristbands were the elite selected by the organization, the lucky humans who would survive this reset. Passers-by cast envious glances at Paco's wristband. Merche had done something to Paco, who had somehow forgotten their falling out and obediently followed Merche's instructions. Soon, those with red wristbands gathered underground where countless flying saucers were parked. Since the 1970s, Barbra had discovered this mysterious underground space, and to this day, he had only managed to decipher one of these craft, a 3,000-year-old flying saucer whose purpose was not as simple as traveling to space. It could transport people to another dimension. Barbra announced that only 30 chosen ones could abandon the doomed world and ascend to the infinite beyond. The wealthy tycoons present were displeased. There were at least 50 people there, and what about the rest? Barbra's solution was simple: kill them all. After sorting out the numbers, he distributed silver coins, which served as the pass to enter the flying saucer. The huge stone that Barbra had spent a fortune on was also placed in the correct position, serving as antennas. Now, as soon as the password was decrypted in Barcelona, they could take off and activate the Eye of God. In the meantime, Fabio led Elena to sneak onto the flying saucer secretly. Although Barbra noticed them through surveillance, he didn't intervene, as he had more important matters to attend to. But Merche had not forgotten her grudge against Elena for stealing Paco's heart and prepared to deal with her in secret. At the same time, news came from Barcelona. The base had been sabotaged by Haruka and the police, and the final calculation had to be stopped. Through the live feed, Barbra saw the carnage there. As he grew restless, Barbra noticed that the camera had captured the computer screen. The final string of numbers had been decrypted. The technicians immediately used the password to activate the corresponding mechanisms inside the spacecraft. Golden patterns moved across the flying saucer as it ascended into the sky, drawing cheers and crowds of onlookers. On the other side, Father Vergara found the intersection point of the lines. He took out the blood of the eye, which was disguised as a golf club, and quickly finished assembling it. Then, using the numbers Fabio had recorded, he manipulated the mechanism on the staff. Unexpectedly, a helicopter flew overhead and started shooting at him. A large armed force also gathered around. With things having come this far, Father Vergara didn't hold back. Wielding the blood of the eye in hand, a red mist mixed with lightning emanated from it, splitting the helicopter asunder. Meanwhile, a fierce battle was unfolding near the flying saucer. Merche, with Paco in tow, blocked Elena's path. She wielded the power of the silver coin, and Fabio was no match for her. Although Elena fought back desperately, Paco had been brainwashed, and under Merche's control, he turned on Elena. In a critical moment, Fabio added fuel to the fire by telling Merche that Father Vergara would ruin their plans. He suggested keeping Elena as a hostage, as she might prove useful at a crucial moment. At this moment, the flying saucer hovered above the giant stone. The passengers closed their eyes, raised their silver coins, and a massive change stirred between heaven and earth. The eye of God emerged from the clouds. Just as the flying saucer was about to approach the pupil, Father Vergara planted the staff in the ground. Red energy entwined around the giant stone, successfully anchoring the flying saucer. But Father Vergara quickly became exhausted. The power of the eye of God was too overwhelming, and he had no strength to stop it. The flying saucer still entered the giant eye, and the end of the world came as scheduled. At the very last moment, the archdemon finally appeared and told Father Vergara that he must leave with the others. Hearing this, Father Vergara broke the staff and was sucked into the rift. He awoke in a grassland and discovered that he was in Pedraza, a small town in another dimension where Elena, Laguna, and others were living peacefully. However, the arrival of Barbra's flying saucer was sure to disturb this peace. With that, Season 2 of this drama concludes.